and then maybe you go into your car. What happens? Maybe the moderator can just help me quickly.
Anyone?
I would say that the temperature rises
in the car, right? You realize that
Yes.
if you park your car there for a very long time, you realize that when you open it, it becomes hotter than the outside environment. All right. So what it means is, I'm just trying to use that to capture this whole climate change, temperature, and carbon dioxide. You realize that the car becomes very hot because it traps in heat, and the heat doesn't leave the car, so it's within, and it becomes hotter and hotter and hotter as the sun shines. So that's the same effect of the effect of greenhouse gases or carbon dioxide. So they trap heat on the surface of the earth, which causes a lot of things that we are seeing now. It induces flood. Also, there is sea level rise because the ice pools are melting, and it's causing sea level rise, and then it's also causing displacement and all that. So this is just for us to know. Now, a quick vital fact is carbon dioxide from human activities is increasing about 250 times faster than it did from the natural sources after the last ice age. Now, this is even more important. Women are 14% more likely to die in an event of caused by climate change. And then also 80% of people displaced by climate crisis are women. So we should know the intensity of the whole conversation around climate change. So nobody can just say climate change is for a selected group of people and not for us. And I think it's also very important that we look at that. Now, there's also global warming and then climate change. So climate change is as a result of the whole global warming. So key among this is weather. We know weather from our basic school is the state of the atmosphere at a particular place and a time as regards to heat, cloudiness, dryness, sunshine. So that is weather. But if you want to look at the climate, it's the weather condition prevailing in an area generally over a long period of time. And so we determine climate based on these parameters. Now, if you look at what I explained, global warming is a gradual increase of the Earth's surface. And then the effect of this global warming causes the climate change. And I've made mention of the heat rise, flooding, and etc., etc. Now, this is just also statistics to prove that yes, climate change is real. Yes, we have a lot of people who deny the fact that there is climate change. Yes, climate change ordinarily is supposed to happen. We all agree. But at the rate that is happening, it's because we are causing it. So 97% of top climate scientists agree that man-made pollution is warming, all right, or warming our climate, and only 3% disagree. And the statistics is from Climate Reality Leaders. So I have a video that I would play so that we follow the conversation, and it summarizes all that I have said by far. So let's quickly look at it.
Activities from pollution to overpopulation are driving up the Earth's temperature and fundamentally changing the world around us. The main cause is a phenomenon known as the greenhouse effect. Gases in the atmosphere, such as water vapor, carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, and chlorofluorocarbons, let the sun's light in, but keep some of the heat from escaping, like the glass walls of a greenhouse. The more greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, the more heat gets trapped, strengthening the greenhouse effect and increasing the Earth's temperature. Human activities, like the burning of fossil fuels, have increased the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere by more than a third since the Industrial Revolution. The rapid increase in greenhouse gases in the atmosphere has warmed the planet at an alarming rate. While Earth's climate has fluctuated in the past, atmospheric carbon dioxide hasn't reached today's levels in hundreds of thousands of years. Climate change has consequences for our oceans, our weather, our food sources, and our health. Ice sheets, such as Greenland and Antarctica, are melting. The extra water that was once held in glaciers causes sea levels to rise and spills out of the oceans, flooding coastal regions. Warmer temperatures also make weather more extreme. This means not only more intense major storms, floods, and heavy snowfall, but also longer and more frequent droughts. These changes in weather pose challenges. Growing crops becomes more difficult. The areas where plants and animals can live shift, and water supplies are diminished. In addition to creating new agricultural challenges, climate change can directly affect people's physical health. In urban areas, the warmer atmosphere creates an environment that traps and increases the amount of smog. This is because smog contains ozone particles, which increase rapidly at higher temperatures. Exposure to higher levels of smog can cause health problems such as asthma, heart disease, and lung cancer. While the rapid rate of climate change is caused by humans, humans are also the ones who can combat it. If we work to replace fossil fuels with renewable energy sources like solar and wind, which don't produce greenhouse gas emissions, we might still be able to prevent some of the worst effects of climate change.
All right, thank you very much. I hope.
Human activities, from pollution.
Yeah, so I hope you all follow through the video, and it has just summarized everything that I spoke about. But I'll also give a quick brief before we enter into the main conversation around internet governance, and then what's the relationship between internet governance and greening ICT and all this that we are talking about. So briefly, you realize that the world has been through some industrial phases. The first industrial revolution was more of mechanical production of equipment. Then we moved into electrical, which is mass production of items. Then this is where the dynamics change. You realize that in the third revolution was the internet age, the age of the internet. And then the fourth revolution is the so-called, what we call the digital revolution. So between the third revolution and fourth revolution, you realize that the impact, for example, the 10 times impact of the internet revolution happened in the digital revolution. So that means there are a lot of things, or there are a lot of impact and a lot of growth, a lot of infrastructure happening around the digital age, which is also very important because during the first three revolutions, the focus was empowering corporations. But then in the digital ecosystem or in the digital revolution, the focus is more on empowering people. And that is the more reason why we are even leveraging on the digital technologies that we have right now to have this one. So we realized that in the previous ones, there was invention of coal-fired steam, and coal is a fossil fuel and one of the deadly causes of climate change. And then you also realize that we also moved from human economy to more of machinery. So we began to use, hello? Hello?
Hello, can you hear? Hello?
Yeah, hello, please, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, please. Yes, please.
But my screen is off now.
No, we can go ahead, please.
Yeah, but my screen, I can't see my screen now.
Oh, okay. Then the technical team.
Well, I can't see my screen.
I think maybe you can share your screen again. Yes. Hello, we can hear you.
Okay, sure. I had to reconnect. Okay, please, can you help me with the host so that I can share the screen?
Okay, you are host now. You can share your screen.
Thank you. I'm very sorry about that. My machine just went blank on me. Yeah. So I was speaking to the fact that all the revolution, one way or the other, has focused more on empowering corporations, and it has happened as increase in burning of fossil fuels, and also some of the activities are deforestation and commercial agriculture. It's also one of the key causes of industrialization and climate change. So I've been talking about emissions. So this diagram explains best on the emissions. So we realize that we have 82% of our anthropogenic gases primarily coming from carbon dioxide. We have methane, which is about 9%. There's also nitrous oxide and then fluorinated gases. So this is just a greenhouse chart from the US, but then this serves as a microcosm to explain the entire issue of emissions. So you realize that the electricity that we are using is about 32% causing these gases. But someone would ask, how would an electricity cause that? Because most of our electricity are powered by fossil fuels, by petroleum products. Then, of course, we have transportation, and our transportation is more powered by vehicles. Then we have industries also consume a lot of petroleum products, and then others. Then agriculture, methane, rice production, and then rearing of cattle. Then we have also commercial and then residential. So whatever be the case, there is a form of emissions. But then the primary emission is carbon dioxide. Now, this is just a chart for you to appreciate all that we've been talking about. So between 1850 and then 2020, you see the graph is growing as a result of increasing carbon dioxide emission in the atmosphere. So this then goes back to ask, in the area of ICT, in your scope of practice, what do you think are some of the ways that contributes to carbon dioxide or anthropogenic carbon dioxide? That is for you to think about. Now, in a conversation around climate change, there are two major ways to focus climate change on. There is the mitigation, and then there is the adaptation. I won't explain everything in this chart, but then if we talk about mitigation, these are steps to prevent climate change from happening or to prevent emissions. But then adaptation is saying that, oh, it has already occurred. So how then do we adjust to live with it so that we don't also increase it? So these are two fundamental terms that in the area of ICT or designing an infrastructure, you'll be hearing, oh, what are the mitigation avenues? What are the adaptation avenues? These are very, very important also to look at. I'll not spend much time here. I'll make the slides available so that you can look at the adaptation and then mitigation as well. So what are some of the adaptation and mitigation methods? So just as I said, mitigation is ways to prevent, all right? Then adaptation is, okay, it has already occurred. How then do we structure to live with it? And that is and adaptation is bigger in Africa than mitigation because we are now learning to live with it. But then if you go to the global north, they focus more on mitigation because they are not really facing the adverse effect, but we are facing the adverse effect. So some of the mitigation measures are active transportation by using bikes. So realize that in most of the European countries, they are using bicycles instead of cars. Then there's also low carbon transportation. They have the electronic buses, the electronic cars, and then electronic motorbikes. Then they are also reducing their waste. A lot of their waste comes in recycle, and then they also reduce their waste. There's proper waste management. There's a lot of investment going into renewable energy and also energy efficient buildings. In adaptation, there are emergency management systems where in some areas like in India and all that, when there is flooding coming, they announce it for people to move into their shelters. There is also a way to build in a climate resilient way. Then there's also preparing for sea level rise. Wildfires are happening every now and then. So there are now ways to control wildfires. And then there is also flood protection. But if you look at the chart very well, you realize that there is an intersection Now, the intersection talks about some of the measures that are mitigation and then adaptation, which is public engagement, local food production, smart growth, and then conservation of water. Now we move into the second part of it, where we focus more on digital pollution drivers. All right. If we are in the ecosystem of tech, we are in the ecosystem of technology, we are in the ecosystem of internet governance, what are some of the issues that contributes to the pollution? Remember, in the previous presentation, I talked about three fundamental things called the triple planetary crisis. The first one being climate change, the second one being pollution, and the third one being that biodiversity loss. So let's look at how, as tech enthusiasts, we contribute to digital pollution. But again, what is digital pollution? So it is a pollution as a result of carbon emissions and waste generated by digital activity. Any digital activity that you do that contributes to carbon emissions. And remember, it is carbon dioxide that causes global warming or increase in temperature, as a result causing climate change. So any activity that is responsible for that, and also creating waste in terms of using the digital devices, using internet, from simple things to more complex tasks. So you have simple tasks like liking posts on social media, emailing, texting, and streaming of videos. All this, one way or the other, contributes to carbon emissions. One would ask how? Yes, because most of these servers are being hosted in a places that they use high intensity of electricity, and this electricity is not coming from renewable energy sources, but it's coming from fossil fuel source. Then also, in the use of internet, a lot of things that happen on the internet, even with the advent of AI and all that, also consumes a lot of energy that causes that. And also manufacturing of devices, the manufacturing process of developing devices. Also, if you check the value chain, you realize that there is also huge carbon emissions there. And of course, electronic waste, e-waste. How many of us have been using phones and then we dispose it, buy new ones, and we dispose it, which now is being a problem in most of the advanced countries. So that is for digital. So and for the drivers, you have manufacturing, machine, and then transportation. When some of these products are made, transporting it from one end to the other is also huge. So now companies are also looking at ways that they can cut off their emissions by some of these transportation methods, and also practices. The use of electronic devices, data centers, and then the services as well should also be also drivers of it. And I've already spoken about the electronic waste. Now, this is just a thought bubble, and I love this thought bubble. So, sometimes when I do presentation, this is where I get a lot of questions. So for every email that you send, you emit 4 grams of carbon dioxide. One person said, but 4 grams is nothing. But calculate 4 grams by 333.2 billion emails that are sent in a day. You can quantify that. Then also, per every tweet is 0.2 gram of carbon dioxide. Sending WhatsApp messages is 4 grams of carbon dioxide. Streaming a 30-minute video show, 1.6 kilogram of it. Then between 2015, 2015 to in 2015, 710 million devices were manufactured, which generated about 1.5 million tons of weight. All right. And this also increased the emissions as well. Building a laptop alone requires 240 kg of fossil fuels and 1.5 liters of water, while others are suffering from water or getting clean and affordable water. 1.5 liter of water is wasted on building just one laptop. Then 5% of the world's electricity is consumed by digital devices. And there is a digital carbon footprint in the EU that you can check and then know some of this stuff that goes on. Now, with the internet governance, why are we here? So if you look at internet per se, the infrastructure that brings us internet requires a staggering amount of energy. And where are these energies from? Our data centers, our access point, that's wiring and antennas, and then also the end users. We as end users also contribute to digital pollution as well. Now, there is also data transfers are stored in servers called data centers. I believe most of you know what a data center is, and these data centers are contributing heavily to pollution. Now we are going to do a quick, very quick in 2 minutes. Just write based on what we've gone through. Just think about internet governance and climate change. Where is the nexus? Please don't use AI. Don't use your phone. Don't use any form of help. Think through this and then let's do it together. So, moderator, please, can you give us just 2 minutes for us to do this exercise? 2 minutes. We've talked about climate change. You understand internet governance. So what do you think are the nexus? How can we contribute? Like what is the nexus between internet governance and then climate change? We have 2 minutes.
Yeah. Yes. Hello, Benjamin.
Hello.
Yes. Hello. Hello.
Yes, my name is Beganim.
Yes. Hello, Benjamin.
My name is Beganim.
Sorry, Maxwell. Please, I would like to know the link on the border. Is that what we are going to connect to, or is just going to be a discussion?
No, ideally, that is what should have been done. But because of time, I would prefer that your notes that you have or the jotters that you've been
given. Can you please put the link in the chat so that we can just copy it?
I am saying that ideally that is what should have been done. But now Jamboard doesn't necessarily work in so many instances.
Okay.
So I'm just saying that in the next 2 minutes, let's just brainstorm between the nexus between internet governance and climate change. Each person should at least write a sentence on their what do we call it? Their notepad.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, sure. Then randomly, we will select some to just tell us what they think is the nexus between internet governance and then climate change.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have 2 minutes to ponder on the issue at hand. Okay, you can start. So please mention your name.
Right.
Okay, so I'm Matthias. So I think a link yes, a link I can readily think of is when we use internet governance and artificial intelligence to assess the climate, to assess changes in the climate or the weather conditions. And then we use this in agriculture, for example, where we are able to use it to plan the types of food agriculture sectors produce. And then also we can also use artificial intelligence to monitor the weather changes to be able to prepare for disaster. So in countries where the ice creates flooding into communities, it can be used as a program to control climate change.
Fantastic.
Okay,
Maybe I'll take one more. Maybe one more or two.
So we have Regina.
Okay.
Hi, can you hear me?
Perfect.
Okay, so I'm not going to give like a technical answer. I'm just going to give like a link. So for me, the internet governance, we just provide a set of policy regulation law to mitigate the climate change and allow us to adapt to the current stage, because it's very important how to adapt and prepare from the lesson that we learned from the past disasters that has been applied to the world.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much. Maybe we'll take
Max,
the last.
Can we take the last? Okay.
Yes, please, precisely. We take the last one.
So
Hello, Max.
Yes.
Yeah, it's Musa here. Happy to connect once
Hey,
again. Yeah.
thank you.
So the connection I'm getting between internet governance and then the climate change issue is I see that internet governance embraces multi-stakeholder model in its discussions about issues in the internet ecosystem. So I think it should expand its net to include the discussion of climate change in this particular multi-stakeholder model. Yeah, so that's where I think there could be a connection. Thanks.
Okay. You are all right, and your answers are very fantastic. And that is the purpose of the exercise. I mean, we now, as fellows in training, understand internet governance and then the nexus when we talk about climate change. So I'll continue. Okay, so in terms of internet governance and climate change, brilliant submission scheme, and I think these ones were given. So I think Musa talked about multi-stakeholder consensus-driven engagement. Then also in terms of internet governance, there could be policy frameworks towards net zero. Now, net zero means that in producing emissions, there should be a way to capture these emissions so that plus and minus will give you zero. So if you are producing 50 kg of emissions, there should be a policy that can absorb this 50 so that there will be that zero, and we call that net zero. Then also affordable and universal access to information. That is, open knowledge is very important. When we get the information about climate change, about greening the tech system, the ecosystem, open climate education, all these are very important because it helps in dissemination of information as well in terms of internet governance. Now, we also need to prioritize energy efficiency because remember I said that in the tech ecosystem, one of the key drivers is the high consumption of energy, which is coming from fossil fuels. So what I also think as internet governance we should be thinking about is in future, when we are building systems, we should be focusing more about the use of renewable energies, primarily solar. Then capacity building, just as we are doing right now, we are understanding the issues of climate change. We are understanding the issues of internet governance. Climate literacy is very important. Digital literacy is very important. Understanding environmental data, how to use environmental data, etc. Then also key it's research and development, R&D. Now, green skills. That is, I think I'll be finishing very soon. So green skills are about occupational knowledge and skills, sometimes called a technical, that often enable professionals to effectively use green technologies. So we have focusing more on resource efficient technologies that reduce waste, and in our term is electronic waste and any form of waste, and also minimize the impact of human action and its performing related processes. Then there's also transversal skills in green skills that talks about the knowledge, values, attitudes that can help you to become or to make pro-environmental decisions in work and life. And that's what we are gaining from this particular workshop, because we are looking at the occupational knowledge and skills and also the transversal skills that would help us to all be green ICT activists. Now, this is a chart that later on we can just go through to appreciate embodying sustainability values, how we can embrace the complexity in sustainability, critical thinking, systems thinking, probably all these frameworks come together to help in the conversation around green. So we can adapt and adopt this green 12 competencies, systems thinking, critical thinking, problem framing, futures literacy, adaptability, agility, political agency, how we can even make informed decisions at the political level. So that's also very important. So there are a lot of green education initiatives that you can take notice of, you can have a lot of repository, a lot of climate courses to do, just to understand and better yourself in terms of green ICT. So the case study which is more focused on case studies, which is more focused on the open campaigns that is happening. And of course, we have Wiki for Human Rights campaign that is being run by the Wikimedia Foundation, which focuses more on how to use Wikipedia to promote environmental sustainability. Then there is also Wiki Green initiatives that we organize Wiki Green conferences yearly, and this year we are going to equally do same in Accra come August 2nd. I would share details with Uncle Ray, and then those who are interested to participate can participate. Then also there is OpenStreetMap and the Humanitarian OpenStreetMap, OSM Ghana. All these are organizations that are doing a lot in terms of promoting green ICTs. And there is a campaign a global campaign that I should have added to the slide. We just launched it last year called the Open Go Scope. So with the Open Go Scope, we are trying to see the intersection and rally all open movements to also contribute at the highest climate change conference, which is Conference of Parties. So what the campaign is seeking to train more people to understand the intersection between climate change and then open. So what the last but one slide, what are big tech companies doing? Now, these big tech companies like Wikimedia Foundation and all that now have set their net zero emissions. Some of these data centers are now using renewable energy sources. Some of these companies are rather going into carbon offsetting, i.e. profit. In fact, carbon offsetting and carbon market is a huge conversation that is going on. Maybe in subsequent webinars, we can focus more on carbon offsetting. Then there's also a circular economy, which prioritizes waste. So what happens is in the circular economy, there is no waste. The waste comes back into the cycle of production. So there is that circular economy. And most of these big tech are now focused on circular economy. So they don't discard their devices. What they do is they pass on their old devices into people that would need it instead of just dumping it. Then there's also now going in terms of infrastructure, sustainability, design, and manufacturing. How can you manufacture products that can be recycled? How can you use items that if the machine goes off or if this infrastructure is not needed again, it can be repurposed. So now that is also a huge industry within the tech ecosystem. And of course, capacity building. Most of these organizations are also focused on building the capacities of their people to understand engagement in environmental sustainability. So my last slide talks about some of the big corporations and what they are doing in terms of net zero emissions, and they have targets. So there is Wikimedia Foundation. They have yearly annual report on sustainability. So they have their sustainability annual. Ericsson now publishes most of their things in terms of how they are contributing. Meta, Apple is equally doing that. Microsoft, Google, Amazon, and then Salesforce. All these big tech, this is not exhaustive enough, but it's telling you that if all these big techs are moving into greening the tech space, why are you left behind? And that is why I appreciate Uncle Ray so much for seeing the need and importance of green ICT and then having it to be taught during the fellowship. And I must say, I really, really, really appreciate it. So digital green isn't cool because of the technology, it's cool because of the impact. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Max. So I think we have some questions for him, right? So first question.
Thank you very much, Mr. My name is Raimi Nwati. I am a librarian from Benin Republic. When you were talking, you said that advanced countries have a proper waste management system, but still they are the one producing the more carbon. If we consider the fact that Africa is just producing 4% of all the carbon emission that we have, do you think that we should be the one thinking about our way of wasting, our way of managing our waste, or is it the advanced countries that should think about a particular way to reduce the carbon that they are emitting? After that,
I would like to also to say that they say that Africa is the country is the continent that will be affected by the climate change. I would like to ask, how come Africa should be the one suffering from the different effects of climate change, despite the fact that we are not the one producing all the great part of the carbon emissions that we have?
Okay. Thank you very much. This is one of the questions that always present itself in all the climate conversations. So yes, of course, if you look at historically, Africa has contributed, it's not even up to 4%. It's even less than 4%, the whole of the continent of Africa in terms of emissions. We are just 4%. But the interesting thing is, and this is the scenario that I always look at, in an event that you are in a boat, all right, or in a canoe, and then someone makes a hole in a canoe, are you going to say because you didn't make it, you are going to sit in the canoe and die? Knowing very well that there is going to be water to flood in the canoe, definitely you are going to make, at least you are going to suggest or think about ways to save your life. And that is how the climate crisis is. And so there is also an angle of climate that is called climate justice. Just because we didn't contribute to it doesn't mean we don't also have to contribute in solving it, because at the end of the day, whatever happens, we are going to face it equally, in as much as we may face it differently. Right now, if there is some of the huge issues that are happening, realize that Africa didn't contribute to it, but we bear the brunt of what historical emissions from the global north, which is very true. But just as we are saying, we also have to take measures in order not to go through some of these things and contribute. So we need to also look at ways that we can. They have equally done worse, and then now they are bossing us and telling us not to even go and take what we call it, our fossil fuel. So that's also another conversation. But how I'd answer your question is that there should be a form of climate justice. There is a conversation that is going on at COP. Last year, I was at COP in Dubai, and these are some of the conversations that are going on. There are adaptation finance. Some of these wealthy countries are committing finances to at least help the vulnerable to mitigate. But the problem is also political, because some of these funds are not even coming. They pledge over 100 billion a year to give to, there's adaptation fund, there's climate funds, finance and all that. But these monies are not coming. So that is also another bottleneck of issues that we are facing. But I would say that we don't need to also do the old ways of doing things to contribute. But as Africans, since we face the brunt of it, they are taking steps. But we also have to also make sure that we take steps in order to save us all in the boat that is sinking. Because if it sinks, it is likely that because they are more advanced, they have life jackets that they can even survive a bit, but we will just go deep down and drown. So to prevent that, we all have to contribute and then make the environment, to safeguard the environment, at least for us.
Okay, so the next question.
Hi, my name is Regine Bambara. I wanted to ask a question about global taxes to African continent, but since you already say that it's ongoing, that's fine. And I don't know, when do you think it can be done based on the, let's say, the conference you have been attending? My second question is, what do you think about Africa trying to mitigate the availability of resources and at the same time trying to, let's say, adapt to the current stage of the climate change? I'm just taking one example. When we had the fiber cut cable some time back, we were really impacted just because that we don't have the data center base in Africa here. If we have to get something like AWS in Ghana or in Ivory Coast or Asia, some kind of databases providing cloud solution, I'm sure we wouldn't even rely on them. And you know, they are the most, let me say, contributing in this climate change. So what do you think? Are we going to mitigate, or we have to stay net zero free for now in Africa, especially?
Okay, I think that's a very interesting question and mind-boggling. So with the first question, usually with the conference of parties, our countries or the country delegation is supposed to negotiate for some of these good things to come to Africa, of which in Ghana, the Environment Protection Agency is doing a fantastic job when it comes to some of these negotiations and then trying to, it's for the record, this whole conversation around climate is very political. Very, very, very political. I don't know where this video will be shared, but this side has to be cut off. Now, it's very, very political, and I'm being honest because most of these countries that come in with their own interest. So, for example, last year when I joined a negotiation on technology development and transfer, and we realized that the US, for example, were very instrumental in making sure that AI is included in the text because they are in AI. But then in African countries, the negotiation, what will be our let's talk about? So these are some of the politics that comes in terms of this. And if you are countries that you go into the COP and they don't have negotiators to contribute to this conversation, they will make a decision and come with a draft text and you will be found wanting. Now, the second question had to talk about whether we are mitigating or adapting. In terms of, I think we have to use both. But then because we face the brunt or we are mostly affected by this, we should more focus on how we can adapt to the impact of climate change. I think is very, very important that we do going through this. So how can brothers in the north, the global north, come and tell us what to do? How can we start thinking and leverage on available technologies to benefit? So if it's adaptation, what are the infrastructure that we could use? Hello? Yeah, what are the available infrastructure that we can do? So for example, Accra is regarded as one of the most polluted places in terms of air pollution in the whole world. All right. So in terms of that, it is already causing. We are causing it. We don't need to wait for the white man or the Western world to come and tell us to control our air pollution. We should come up with technologies. We should leverage on data. We should collect our own data. We should make our data open so that a lot of developers can equally think through to develop. And this is how we can make progress in terms of this whole climate conversation. If we don't capacitate a lot of our people to understand the issues, we'll always wait for somebody to come and solve our problems. And over the years, this is what we've seen. We cause our problems and wait for others to come and solve it for us, which is not working. And so we need to change the dynamics in the green sector where we take charge and then we try, regardless of the bottlenecks, we can just leapfrog to make some of these. And there are amazing young people going around doing fantastic things in using technology. Now I work with a number of young innovators and some of their innovations are so amazing. They are just capitalizing on all this to also improve their lives, make business out of it, and then etc. So I think we need to balance the mitigation and then adaptation, but focus more on adaptation because we are facing more of the brunt of it.
Okay, thank you. So we are going to have the last question. We'll continue the discussion online. Okay, so we are going to go for gender balance.
Okay, thank you very much.
A lady spoke, a lady asked us. So it was that.
Thank you very much. So my question is, what are some of the e-waste recycling programs we have, and how possible is the zero emission?
Okay, with the e-waste, what I know, some of the companies now in Ghana, I know a lot of young people. I work with one, he has a company called 5 Seconds. And what he does is he goes around to take electronic waste. And then they have been trained to take some useful parts from this electronic waste and make sure that they reduce the toxic or its toxicity on the environment. So that's one of the ways that they are contributing to e-waste. In other countries, there are e-waste collection points. So people just go in there to put their electronic waste in there and then they rather use it to do their own stuff. Now, what is also going on is, in fact, in EU and some of these places, they have a policy. Now, their policy is that some of the materials that you use in whatever that you produce should be able to be repurposed, and that's how they are contributing to e-waste. So if it's laptop, if this laptop gets spoiled, it could be repurposed, and then it wouldn't cause any whatever. Now, there's also another policy that is going on. In some countries, I read a paper where if you are able to produce a phone, you should make sure that the parts of the phone are available so that people don't change phones regularly. So that if they have a cracked screen, it's easier for them to get a replacement of whatever they need. If it's a battery, you should make sure. And now they are also doing upgrade and recycling, where you can use the same phone, the same model, but you can upgrade it like the advanced phones. So all these are technical conversations that are going on to reduce electronic waste, just to mention a few.
Okay,
And I
that's
think
great.
your last one was, how can we reach net zero? We can reach net zero when most of our infrastructure that we have around is, because in the ICT sector, we consume a lot of energy. One of the ways that we can contribute to that is to make sure we have renewable energy supply. All right, it's very, very important. With that, we can reduce our emissions and also look at the value chain of your production, manufacturing process, and all that, do an itinerary on how you can cut off emissions. So I think that's how I can attempt to answer your question. Thank you.
So a round of applause for Maxwell.